You know, after watching The Conjuring 3, I thought to myself, man, I really didn't get too scared. Well, okay, there was one scene that I jumped at, or two. Okay, 3 scenes. 4? What's going on, you guys? James here with another real review, and today we're diving into The Conjuring 3, or The Conjuring The Devil Made Me Do It. Thank you to Warner Brothers for giving me the chance to see this in theaters, guys. It was a nice big theater on a big screen, and well, there were a decent amount of people in there, and sometimes when other people jump or scream, I jump and scream, so that was exactly what happened in this film. It's directed by Michael Chaves, who also directed 2019's The Curse of La Llorona, and it's starring Patrick Wilson, Vera Farmiga, and Ruairi O'Connor. Now, this is a spoiler-free review, guys, so I'm not going to give anything away, but what I will say is that this story follows the Warrens on a new investigation where they must find out exactly what possessed this man in a small town, leading to a totally new mystery. Now, this is kind of neat. I love the way that the director kind of played with the story, but there are some things that holds this back from being one of the better movies in the Conjuring franchise. Now, guys, before we get into it, if it is your first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James, where I talk about movies really like this all the time. So if you like that and so much more, go ahead and hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, and tap on that bell, guys, because you're going to want to be in the comments for the rest of the month. We're going to have some amazing reviews, reactions, and news pieces. And guys, if you haven't already, smash that thumbs up button if you are a big fan of the Conjuring franchise, and let me know down below in the comments, were you a fan of this movie? Do you think it ranks among the best movies in this, and which Conjuring film is your favorite? Alrighty, guys, so let's get right into what I thought worked with The Conjuring 3, and that really is Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson's chemistry. They are still excellent on screen together. They're really the heart and soul of this movie, and I do think that the director understands that the most out of any of the 3 films. If anything, their love story is really put on a pedestal here more than the first Conjuring and the second. There were also really sweet moments in this that felt like their send-off for the franchise, but they had solo moments that I think both of them excelled in as well. But guys, among the two, I do think Patrick Wilson steals the show in so many scenes. He's also battling his own health issues in this movie, so it's kind of neat to see how they definitely pull away from those possession scenes, and the horror in the movie comes from our characters themselves and their expressions rather than the demons and everything that we're seeing on screen. I also really appreciated the filmmaking aspect of this sequel. Director Michael Chaves creates some of the most intricate horror set pieces that I've seen on film, and it really is so fun. And that's not the word I thought I would use for The Conjuring 3, but there are some moments where I thought they were more fun than scary. Now, that's a positive and a negative, which we'll get into later, but there were some moments that I thought, oh my gosh, this reminds me of Evil Dead. I found that this rivaled the first movie in terms of cinematography too, with some really clever uses of lighting and a lot of moments in the third act that really stunned me, and stunned me in a good way, because there are times where we just are looking at a beautifully framed shot, and that comes sometimes in the beginning as well, but really in that third act it just really hits a home run. And I thought for the little amount of actual acting that our main supporting actor got in this film, he did a decent job. And yes, I'm talking about Ruairi O'Connor, who plays Arnie Johnson. He's on trial for murder after being possessed. Now, I won't tell you anything else, that's not a spoiler, it was in the trailer, but how he got possessed and what happens afterwards I think is effective for the most part. I am just a little disappointed that he didn't get enough screen time. He should have gotten more screen time, to be honest with you, because his acting, when it is on full display, is really impressive, including the body contortion scenes. I'm like, Lord, I know you're not doing this. This is a CGI scene, but still, it is really impressive and effective. And from what I remember after watching the first Conjuring and the second, I think that this third installment plays with sound the best. And the reason I say that is because there's a deafening silence in many moments, and you think the jump scare is going to come and it doesn't, and it kind of just leaves you hanging, and you think, oh my gosh, is it going to come in this next scene? And I love the fact that director Michael Chaves always keeps the audience guessing. At least he kept me guessing, and I still think it provided for a fun time. However, there are drawbacks to this third installment, guys, and I will say that this is the weakest in the Conjuring trilogy. And not only that, guys, it's the least scariest. I'll even go as far as to say that this film is not scary to me, and that's saying a lot, guys, because if you know me, I'm a chicken. I freaked out during the first and second Conjuring movies, and honestly, I am a fan of horror, but I do get scared easily. It's just this film is more of a thriller than it is a horror movie. but there are times where it desperately wants to be a full-blown horror film, and I see that the jump scares really were just too predictable here, and the actual demon designs are not very well done. I mean, guys, there's a cheapness to this in terms of horror. Now, that's not to say that the production design isn't good and the makeup was terrible. It just doesn't feel as authentic as the first and second movies. There were a handful of moments though that I could say were actually well executed, but the movie definitely feels less bare bones and more generic. There are plenty of moments that didn't necessarily feel grounded, and unfortunately it kind of felt half-baked. There's just a less unique feel here and more of a formulaic approach, and while our leads are really good together, the dialogue is also less than compelling. There were plenty of throwaway moments here with Vera Farmiga where I even thought, why is she saying what she's saying? It's not convincing, but also, why are you wasting her talent? A lot of the conversations were also really forgettable, and the thing is, the strength with the Conjuring movies so far have been this story right between the Warrens. And honestly, it had potential to really be an amazing and excellent send-off, but the script needed a little bit more work, I think, and while the base of the story is there, I don't think all the way through the execution was as foolproof. And that leads me to my next drawback, because guys, I just think there's too much going on here, and it's not confusing really. They over explain so many things to the audience, but there's just 3 storylines, and when done well, movies can really succeed in kind of weaving them together and bringing it home at the end. But here it just felt very convenient for the plot, and things were just happening, and I did not really think it was as successful as I wanted to be. The movie simply has multiple identities it tries to take from start to finish. Either it wants to be a straight up horror movie, a true crime film, or a mystery and whodunit movie. It just takes away from the tension because I'm almost having to reframe my perspective in every other scene, and that's not necessarily good if you're looking at this film just as a straight up horror movie, which it wants to be, but then you throw in the other 2 identities, and guys, I'm sorry, it's just too much. What made the first 2 Conjuring films so effective to me was really its mainline story that didn't have multiple threads being created. What I will say is that in the 3rd act though, the movie does finally remember, hey, this movie works well when focusing on the Warrens and them fighting demons, although I think it's just too jam-packed, especially considering everything that happens before the 3rd act, for me to really feel as focused as I was in the first 2 films. And I know I mentioned it earlier, guys, but there's a certain convenience factor to the story that also made me scratch my head. The stakes are never really pinned up against any of our leads here, and that was an issue for me, is that when one thing happened that wasn't going according to plan and you thought, oh my gosh, they're in trouble, the plot makes up for it in the next frame. It's unfortunate because that also breaks any tension as the film goes on. So guys, overall, The Conjuring 3 is not necessarily a terrible horror movie. Now, I do think that the bar was raised pretty high with the first 2 Conjuring movies, so coming into this film, I thought, okay, it needs to at least meet the bare minimum, but it didn't really get there all the way. There were certain moments that were really awesome, like Michael Chaves directs a scene and there's a dead body that kind of just goes across a room. I'll just say that, and it's really, really well done. I think the prosthetics in that moment were great, and there are some genuinely terrifying moments thanks to the acting. I just don't think that The Conjuring 3 was an overall complete experience. There were clear writing issues, and I don't think the film is scary, and honestly, if it's a horror movie, it needs to be at least that. Scary. And for someone who loves a good composition in a horror movie, I felt like the score here in the 3rd Conjuring film was just not there enough for me. There wasn't anything terrifying, and it didn't really add anything to scenes. If anything, when the scenes were silent and there was no score, it was pretty darn scary, but when there is a score, it just kind of takes away from the film. So The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It really is a movie that is just okay, and honestly, if you don't see it in a theater, I don't think you would be too terribly disappointed. And that's sad to say because I really love a theater going experience for a horror movie, but I think you should really go and see A Quiet Place Part 2 if you're going to pick between one or the other. The Conjuring 3 is a movie that has a lot of ideas, and it presents a really interesting story, but I don't ever think it gets all the way there by the end. So there you have it, you guys. That's my real review of The Conjuring 3. Now, I need to know what you guys think about this film. Is this the last time that we see the Warrens on screen? I do think it is, especially with how they ended the film, but I need to know your thoughts about the movie. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? And hey, if you're already here, go ahead and hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, and tap on that bell, guys, and smash that thumbs up button, again, if you're a big fan of Ed and Lorraine Warren, because yeah, they're pretty great together. Alrighty, guys. Well, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna go pray. Seriously, I was praying throughout this movie as well. Again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening.